Hello, everybody. It is Monday, October 28th, and here's your Cup of Jones. Gonna move this mic a little bit closer. Hi. It's the last Monday in October. It's the last Cup of Jones in October. That was it. I'm doing my very light Scott Summers cosplay today to celebrate. Tomorrow night, as we will talk about in our schedule, of course, is our Halloween group stream. Brandon Kagan, we might as well kick it off, is asking what our Halloween stream plans are this year. So we're streaming tomorrow night, and Ian and Don are streaming something a little spooky this week. Again, not a lot of just incredible spooky stuff. We did theme up the podcast desk, or rather Ian put a lot of work into making our podcast desk look nice and jolly. Seasonal. I think it's still, maybe we'll take the skull out, but I think the leaves and the pumpkins and stuff like that. Mic is clipping. No reason the mic would be clipping. No settings have been changed. Cool. Maybe I'll just drop the audio there. Cool. Didn't change a setting or anything whatsoever on my settings on my computer at all. But there we go. A little bit quieter. Maybe I was just really loud, a lot louder than I usually am because I'm talking about October. I'm talking about Halloween. Everything sounds fine for me. It's funny because it's like normally you would add up as many comments as you can in the chat and be like, well, like 8 people are saying it sounds bad, but only 3 people are saying it sounds good, so maybe I'll make a change. It's like if Blood says something doesn't sound good, you got to make that change. It doesn't matter everybody else in chat's like, well, I'm not hearing that. Blood's hearing it, so got to make the change. Let me know if I'm a little too quiet, and I'll crank it up later. We've been talking about reviews constantly for the last couple weeks on Cup of Jones. Cut a Call of Duty Modern Warfare review late last week that went up this weekend that I'm actually very proud of. The video turned out really well. Hubert did a great job with the script. Blood did a great job just making sure we had all of the updated information that was pertinent by the time we actually posted the review, because a lot of the post-launch stuff, especially with a big multiplayer game like Call of Duty, will shift day to day. So I think did a good job kind of talking about what the state the game was in at the time we put up the review. New episode of Don's Design Lab later today. And Don was the focus of the last episode of Easy Update. So if you're a Don fan, there's some great Don content available right now and coming soon to Easy Allies. I thought this was cute, and I hung out with her this weekend because she's a member of Ripley, which is Amanda's improv team. But for those of you that have been watching the last several episodes of Fiasconauts, would definitely be familiar with Jessica Linverdi, who is, if you've been to our meetups, actually has helped us out on staff at our meetups in the past, and has been on the last 5, 6, 7 episodes of Fiasconauts straight. And so we asked her as a group if she would like to become a more permanent fixture in Fiasconauts. And she said, specifically a permanent Fiasconaut, and she gave us the thumbs up. She actually just wrapped up a season of a show called Rat Queens that is available on Hyper RPG. It's available on their channel. And if you go check that out, you will also see other people that Amanda has done improv with, other members of the Ripley crew. And that is a show that Jess just wrapped up. And so she has more time to work on other stuff. And so I am stoked because I have not had a lot of time. I would like to possibly return to Fiasconauts in November or December as soon as possible. I haven't been on that show in a while and I miss it. Talked about tomorrow's our costumed Halloween party stream. I finally did a new episode of Trailer Jones that went up this last week. It's just a solo episode. I talked about the final trailer for Star Wars, the very spoiler-heavy final trailer for Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, and whatever that means. And I will get another person. I was bummed because I asked Brad to be on it, and he's like, I'm media blackout. I don't even want to watch that trailer. And then I showed up for work 2 days later, and he was like, I watched it anyway. I'm like, Brad, you... So, could have had Brad, but I will make sure to get another person on the next episode of Trailer Jones. Just wanted to get up there to show everybody the format. And all of you were like, we're old hat, this new version of Trailer Jones. We've seen that a while ago because we watched Cup of Jones. A lot of people hadn't. A lot of nice comments on YouTube. A lot of people dig the format. A lot of people just independently reached out to me on Twitter and said that they dig it. So thank you to everyone for the kind words and the inspiration to finishing that. And sadly, Twitch premieres are gone. Twitch doesn't have that functionality anymore, so we might have to shake up how we do Mysterious Mondays, which is the premiere of Mysterious Monsters, which will be next week, I believe, and or soon. It's coming up, and Ian's like, yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but so yeah, that's a bummer. We basically have to do that manually. Twitch handled a lot of that tech, so we would actually have to manually, play the video and watch it on our own and just not have Twitch take care of everything for us. And it turns out it just wasn't a very heavily used feature, which is always a bummer. Always a bummer. Oh yeah, sorry. Holy Angel, I don't know if you were getting confused. Jess is not the 10th ally, nor is Jason Wishnoff the 10th ally, nor is, all of the people that we have brought, the crew at Game Explain are not official allies. There's a lot of people we bring in on a regular basis on, Sean German Efficiency Clinton is a dear friend, but not the 10th ally. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can get through the lifespan of Easy Allies with just sticking to the 9. And then we're just independent contractors. It's just everybody else that we bring in. Which brings us to the schedule. We've already talked about it a little bit. But again, Dawn Design Lab later today. Get hyped. Halloween party tomorrow night. The other spooky stuff that apparently 2 Point Hospital is a spooky mode. We have locked down our schedule for tomorrow night. We will say what our schedule is. I believe we are planning on streaming from 4 to 9 p.m. Might go a little bit later. We'll see. I don't know how late I can stay up, even on a Halloween party night. Majora's Mask, which is actually also has somewhat spooky vibes, will continue on Wednesday with Mike and Mike. Another episode of Achieve It Yourself. Again, you can, all of you watching Cup of Jones can check out those early episodes. And Thursday Stacked again, Trials of Mana Weekly Hunts, and I will be back a Halloween night. I'll be missing trick-or-treaters on my doorstep to play Pokemon Silver with Kyle Bossman. And then our weekend podcasts, the Easy A podcast and Friend Code. Grand Stream Saga continues with Kyle Bossman on Friday. And our monthly Q&A, which I had to skip, unfortunately, for personal reasons. I was not on this month's Q&A, but that'll go public for everybody. Actually, at our meeting for the month of November, which we've already had, we scheduled out November, the last bits of reviews for 2019. Dipped into December a little bit as well, because a lot of us will be missing about half of December. We talked about maybe changing up the format of the Q&A, the way the Q&A we're possibly going to do that in person next time. We all meet in the studio and then do the Q&A that way, see how that goes, see how people at that tier enjoy that. And also talked about the value of the Q&A tier, whether there is the majority of the value in the Q&A tier is people being able to ask questions and not necessarily watch the stream, get early access to the viewing of the stream itself. And so kind of curious actually to reach out if any of you are at the Q&A tier. What is the real value there at that tier that you are going for? If we were to do the Q&A not just for an exclusive set of patrons, but for everybody all at the same time when the Q&A premiered, is that something that you feel would take away from the value that you have at that Q&A tier? So let us know. Going through the list. Oh, and cutting Outer Worlds from Daniel Bloodworth. Getting the script for Outer Worlds from Bloodworth today, and going to make that my priority today, and want to get that done today and get that up and out to you as soon as possible, because a lot of people are talking about Outer Worlds. Started Outer Wilds yesterday, went over to a friend's house and played a bunch of GTA Online with him and his friends, and showed off Control and a bunch of games that he hadn't seen yet, and cracked open Outer Wilds. And boy, that game just throws you right at it, right in the beginning. So haven't checked out Outer Worlds yet, but I'm excited to go. We got the only 1 week late this time. But yeah, Blake gets all the late reviews. Sorry, Blood. But we got the script in from Blood. Nice. I'm going to read that right after. And there we go. There's our schedule. There's our week. There's all the stuff going on that you missed. Can maybe check up on last week. Business questions. As we said, Brandon K. Gann, what are the Halloween stream plans for this year, and do you think it offers the potential to do some unique things for future Halloween streams that you don't do throughout the rest of the year, like a costume contest? I mean, the costume contest currently exists just in the court of public opinion. We're all going to be wearing costumes. Most of us will be wearing costumes tomorrow. You can judge for yourselves who you think is the best. I don't know if we necessarily want to shame any allies that aren't wearing costumes or pick one that is better than the others. I got a pretty good one tomorrow. I'm really happy about it. Yeah, like I said last week and just throughout this month, and especially it burns me now because I got a little baby to take care of, and so my schedule is pretty stacked. But it's a bummer that we can't do more spooky stuff. It's a bummer we can't make that just a major priority. We all have a lot of different shows, a lot of different responsibilities, and of course a lot of reviews. Blood has an idea. That's about it. I'm not going as Cyclops tomorrow. Cyclops and Green Lantern are like my two costume ideas that are just a little too expensive for me to realize. Because if I did the Cyclops, I'd want to do like Golden Age. I'd want to do blue with the yellow strap and the red X, and then that would mean just a giant red or yellow and red visor, which I've looked for. I've found visors online, but they're very sleek and very like fancy and updated. And he just has this like massive microwave sized headset in the old classic costume, and Green Lantern, with like a ring that glows and the whole outfit and everything. One of these days. Morgan Mahala. Could EZA be discussing the factors that surround video games more in their reviews, not necessarily changing scores, though? For example, the price of a game at launch can make a huge difference. Link's Awakening for $19.99 seems like a mandatory purchase, while $60 seems like a questionable investment. Different price, same product. Additionally, pre-order and special editions often come with exclusives and game content that the base versions don't contain and may alter the experience. Same price, different product. As games grow in scale and complexity, it is seemingly impossible to catch every bug and error in the code until the public reports it. Clearly, the functionality of a game is compromised, but it is also clearly not the creator's intent for these problems to remain in the game. How do the Allies balance the need for fast content publication and being understanding of necessary patches and adjustments post-launch? I think, this is going to be a very safe answer to this, but I think just being aware of when that review goes up. Case in point, something that I, excuse me, highly respect Michael Huber for. We were privileged enough to attend a review event for Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and Huber got a lot of stuff done at that event. You got a lot of campaign stuff done, multiplayer stuff done, all the different modes. Those events can be nice because you are playing with people that are there for the review. So these are people that are there to examine the same things that you are. And so I often enjoy review events because it's nice to kind of feel the energy in the room, compare that to different modes, and see how fast it takes these people who I know it's the first time they've ever played this game, how fast it takes them to adapt to it and get better at certain modes and skills and stuff. But Huber also wanted to check out the game after launch. He also wanted to check it out once the servers were up and different modes were live. Blood's weighing in on this, and I will offer Blood's opinions in a second. And so that meant that his review didn't go up on Thursday. The embargo was Thursday morning, so his review didn't go up until Saturday. So a lot of that was him applying additional footage. Like I reached out to him and I said for the shotgun shot, he specifically mentioned, and they told me this actually when I went to at Judges Week, when we went to Infinity Ward and learned about Modern Warfare. They talked about the shells in the guns, that like you would hear casings and shells come out of the gun and hit the ground. And he specifically went up against a bus and fired a gun, and you could not only hear the shells hitting the ground, it wasn't a canned sound effect. It was reacting to stuff going on in the environment. You could hear the shells bounce off the bus and then hit the ground. And so Huber wanted to show that not only with the power of the shotgun, but with the shell popping out of the shotgun and you hearing that hit the floor. And I messaged Huber on Slack and I was like, get that shotgun shot. Like you got music underneath a lot of this footage. There's a lot of other guns happening. Like find a quiet shot in the game. Get me that shotgun by itself. And he cleared a room of 3, enemies with one shotgun shot. And it just made a great moment, for that review. So sometimes it's nice taking that extra time to make sure the footage reflects the stuff that we talk about in the script and make sure the script is aware of when this is coming out. Brandon Gann also brought up something similar to this question of like using, changing the terminology that you use in reviews. And by the way, I stacked all of our review comments at the beginning of this business question. So this is one example of how I will move questions around so we can stay on one topic. But Brandon Gann asked about, why do language that specifically dates your review? I think it's so that there's no question about when that review came out, because if there's any modes or anything that changes after the fact, we can specifically say as of right now. As of right now, you cannot play night mode in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. That might have changed literally right now, but as this video went live, they're going to add that to a playlist down the road. And Bloodworth is weighing in on all of this because we're talking about reviews. It'd be fair to mention the price of the review, and we do sometimes, but I don't think it's necessary. We use it. It's generally the discretion of the writer. It's just a matter of whether the writer feels like it's worth bringing up. I'll probably bring up the price of Cat Quest because that's only $15. So I think if you're looking at my Cat Quest review and you're like, how much is this? Be like $15. Like, okay. It looks like it's $15. Just different opinions on whether those events are worthwhile. And Mushworks asked something. And Mushworks says the Call of Duty review was rushed. 'Twas not. We definitely took our time with that one. Alexander Zirianov, you write and edit your reviews, meaning me. Brandon Jones, do you consider availability of necessary shots when you write a review script? I'm definitely there are all sorts of practices and all sorts of things that I do. I'm very cognizant of whether I turn the music on and off in a game. And so if I'm playing through a game and I get to a point where it's like, okay, like I got the music in this game. If it's something where the music evolves or whether they're constantly introducing new tracks, like Red Dead, I never turn the music off because obviously Red Dead is surprising you with the music a lot. But if it's like a multiplayer game and I'm playing the multiplayer match that I've played like 20 times already, it's like, all right, I'll turn the music off so I can get a couple clips that don't necessarily have music. Call of Duty is actually very good about that. They only really highlight like kind of the most intense moments. And there was some music in some of the clips that I used in the Call of Duty review, but you can't really hear it on top of the bass track that I have at the bottom there. Yeah, I definitely think about that. I don't often do recaptures. That recapture is a Michael Huber classic. Rather than like dig through footage, Huber's just like, I'll capture it again. So he'll go out and get a specific shot for the review. I generally don't do that because I like over capture. I'll generally capture like 2 to 3 times the amount of clips that I'll get from some of the other allies. Bloodworth is really good at making up shot lists, and a lot of times Bloodworth, looking at the numerical list of shots that I get from Blood, I can tell like, oh, there's like 6 or 7 shots he just took out of there because he went and reviewed the footage after the fact and was like, you don't need that stuff. That's not gonna. I hit the record button because I thought something was interesting was going to happen, and nothing interesting happened. But yeah, Blood's like me. We hit that record button a lot. Yeah, availability of necessary shots. Obviously, you don't have the script written while you're playing the game. I just try to capture absolutely as much as I possibly can. John White, is it safe to assume that Huber will be reviewing Shenmue 3 in November? If this is the case, would you consider allowing Huber to do voiceover for the review if he's interested? Of course. Anybody, any of the allies can do VO for anything that they want to do. I don't mean to take anything away from you. I was just thinking with such a unique emotional attachment to the series, it might be nice to hear Huber's words in his own voice for a one-off special review. Sure, I'll ask. I think I wrote that down at the end there, like Huber VO, I guess. Alex AI for a takeaway. Alex AI, what are the chances for a Ring Fit adventure review with German Efficiency? German Efficiency actually got a job for the time being. He got a job temporarily for a different project, and he's very busy right now. He got a good gig at German Efficiency. He's doing very well for himself, career-wise. But yeah, he's busy right now. And I wanted to have him on the stream as well, but he was busy. Joseph LaRussa, I want to ask you about, and I'm going to talk a little bit also more, today's editorial will be about, not specifically the Shenmue 3 review, but the Shenmue 3 review brought up an interesting question within the Easy Allies in terms of stuff I'll talk about in the editorial. Joseph LaRussa, I want to ask you about talking about Q4 and the Allies just not having time to review everything. I understand that it's a relatively busy time of year, but there's some small games and remasters coming out that than anything so far. So why dedicate resources to those instead of the rare bigger releases? I'm asking this because of the lack of Greedfall reviews irking me. Yeah, I'm hungry for Greedfall. Just like how not reviewing Kingdom Come Deliverance a couple years ago did. You've released 12 reviews since Greedfall came out, including 4 remasters of old games, 2 tiny indie games, and an expansion pack. In my opinion, one of those reviews could have, and again, to me, should have, been dropped to cover a brand new mid-level IP. The industry has indies released all the time. Remasters have less intrinsic value, unless they're beloved and hyped, than a new IP, and an expansion is a prime candidate for a don't skip. So in addition to the above question, how do you decide where to dedicate your resources? Blood pretty much nails this. I don't know how much I'll add on top of Blood's response. For the most part, our coverage is largely based on who's interested in a game. We go through the release calendar game by game, ask if anyone is interested in covering each game, then ask if they want to do a review or something else. Also, things like length, availability, and familiarity with similar games can certainly factor in. Brandon doesn't have enough time right now to commit to something as big as Greedfall, but Groundhog Day is relatively quick and easy to get through in a timely manner. Like I finished that in a weekend. Like started on Friday, had the review done on Monday. While I'm sure it's a bummer, there simply wasn't anyone that wanted to cover Greedfall over something else on their plate. There are certainly times when we'll agree that a game should get reviewed, and we try to sort that out. This just wasn't one of those cases. Yeah, Greedfall was kind of a sleeper hit. That was not a game I was covering or following in the March up to its release. Definitely something I'm curious about. Maybe something that I'll be able to check out over the holidays. That would be really fun. But yeah, Blood brings up a good point that a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, like remasters and indie games, that stuff is just a lot quicker to get through than Greedfall. You know, if we had jumped onto Greedfall at the time when it came out, we would have no idea how long that game is. We have not been talking with the developers. That was not something. We did not go to a preview event for Greedfall. We didn't have a lot of information about Greedfall. Obviously, that's something that we could research, that we could do on our own to find out more about the game. But then that could be said literally for every single game in the entire industry. You just actually, Joseph, happen to be picking a game that I am very curious about. The protagonist with like a rifle and tricorn. Like, I love that era. I love that time period. I love the style of that game. Very curious what that game is all about. The expansion pack that you mentioned is Destiny 2, which is something that is very near and dear to Huber's heart. So it's like, again, you're at, like, on one hand, from your perspective, you're like, if you had not done the Destiny 2 review, then one of you could have reviewed Greedfall. But from my perspective, pulling Huber off of something and telling him, no Destiny 2, Huber. And he's like, but I want to play this. I think Shadowkeep is interesting. My friends are playing it. I want to get involved in this. And like, no, you need to review this other game that one of us thinks is important. It's like, it's always best to kind of find where all of the allies naturally rest, just based on their interest. Yeah, some of those remasters of old games, aren't necessarily as interesting in terms of being educated at youtube.com/easyallies. Like, if you sign up for a remaster, it's the question of like, is this good or not? Where you have, Damiani reviewing a remaster, Brad reviewing the Medieval remaster. That's something that they're interested in. And again, something that they can finish very quickly. Like, Brad knows Medieval, could have been done in a quarter of the time that it would have taken us to do Greedfall. So I think that's something else also that, Blood talks about time, but it's not only just time. He mentions specifically the Greedfall is big, but it's not only big, it's question mark big. It's like, is this 20 hours? Is this 50 hours? Is this 80 hours? I have no idea. But we, admittedly have not done really any coverage of Greedfall. Greedfall hasn't come up on Frame Trap. Like, that is just something that slipped through the cracks. Hopefully, maybe next year, let's try to remember Greedfall, and let's try to figure out what that shortlist is in the Q3, Q4 output of reviews from Easy Allies in 2020. Certainly, at launch, when the PS5 and the Xbox whatever launch, and Scarlet launches, there's probably going to be some games in there, some random sports games and stuff that slip through the cracks. And it's just like, why wouldn't you review a console launch game? It's like, well, none of us are really focused on that. None of us really think our opinion is of value to our channel it's the other thing you have to understand, Joseph, is like, when we do reviews, now that we've done away with a lot of features and we're kind of more focused on streaming, or more focused on interesting one-off shows like, occasional board game show or Together We RPG, switching up Huber Syndrome and doing Prison of Love now. Reviews are some of the most intensive stuff that we do here at Easy Allies. So when we're taking on a project like that is a big project. And so taking on Greedfall for the sake of doing an interesting game or covering something that people are starting to talk about. And that's the other issue, is that like the buzz around Greedfall from my perspective didn't really start until after that game came out. So, and Blood putting his final thoughts on this. We could have gotten a Greedfall, but yeah, there wasn't a pull from the allies. I was totally in contact with them. Oh yeah, I wasn't calling out Bloodworth there. Blood is definitely in contact with them. I just meant it's not something like contact with them like I chat with Rockstar people every now and then. Like Huber is quote unquote in contact with Shenmue. Like Ian was in contact with Control. Like, this is a game he's talking about, he's bringing up. We're watching trailers, we're talking about the trailers, we're talking about what our community is talking about that game. Greedfall was just one of those things that slipped through the cracks. Launch reviews are going to suck, fam. Like, there's one console available in 20 games. Best case scenario, says Bloodworth. So be prepared. But thank you again, Joseph. Like, I always encourage, even though I'm kind of like, dousing the flames of that comment, I always want to hear what we're not covering. I always want to hear what we're not reviewing, especially now that we're getting into conversations, not to talk about the fact that Greedfall could be one of like the best games of the year, but I would love to show up at GOTY's, with at least a little bit of experience with Greedfall. G the Finger, loved your comment in September's Q&A regarding the Cyberpunk versus Last of Us GOTY conversation. Quote from me, look at these 8 million things you can do, and you're like, yeah, but that one scene made me cry. It's my infamous GTA 5 versus Last of Us 1 debate that I lost because Last of Us 1 was emotional and GTA 5 was not. So it didn't matter. Literally, GTA 5 could paint your house and Last of Us would still win. Do you ever feel like conversations like these are decided before they even happen, with opinions and critical takes locked and loaded before the games are played, a result already predetermined? I feel as though I could write down the arguments the allies would bring up in 2020 GOTY conversations today and be 85% accurate. 85% is rough. Is this because we've become so familiar with everyone's tastes and predispositions, or have minds already been made up? Minds are never already made up. That's like the whole point with, kind of like this December. It's why if opinions were made up, we would just do GOTYs in December. We do GOTYs in January because we need that extra time. I remember last year, we like the last 2 weeks actually were very specifically planned out, where it was like, exactly what day are we shooting? Okay, that gives me exactly this many days to play this game or put this many hours into this game before we meet. And I think, you say everyone's tastes and predispositions. I think our tastes are I think people's tastes, but I think it's unfair to say that I know about your predispositions because, I think Ben Moore is predisposed to be interested in Death Stranding, but I have no idea what Ben thinks of Death Stranding. Not a clue. I don't know. I can't, there's no promise Huber's going to like Shenmue 3. Huber's probably going to enjoy the process of playing Shenmue 3. He's probably going to like smile when he boots up the menu screen and then jumps in, but then like, he might have a lot of issues. Like, I really like Ghost Recon The Wildlands. I don't like Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I'm still playing a ton of it. I think expectations are something that we should be aware of, and certainly something that you as viewers can probably identify much easier than we can because you're the one watching us make all of these crazy statements. But I don't... I've gone into GOTY discussions before, kind of being able to predict like who was going to think what, but that certainly didn't help me with debate. That certainly didn't make the GOTYs any more interesting to watch. We definitely need to go into GOTY conversations just having a completely wide open slate because you never know. I've been super surprised on GOTY votes over the years, dating back to game trailers when Miguel and Shane and Justin and Ryan and all those other guys were involved in it as well. Yeah, I think it's just because you've become familiar. Like, there's only so many ways we can describe things. That's why it's nice that there's 9 of us, because you get different, not only editorial voices, but just plain voices, just the vocabulary that we use, the cadence that we have, our general attitudes and how they play off of each other. But what you get into GOTYs, I've already been surprised in 2019. I've already asked some allies directly about their gaming opinions, or asked some allies how they think other allies are going to vote. Not like, again, like throwing them up against a wall or like backdoor shitty deals in a dark alley. It's just like, oh, we were just talking about that game, and then someone's name will come up and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's probably going to be one of their favorites for GOTYs. And like, no, actually they like that game, but I don't, I'd be surprised if they mentioned it for GOTY. And so these things are never brought up. I can't recall the last time I've ever had a conversation at Easy Allies concerning Game of the Year when someone's like, well, that's locked. I'm upset at that ally because they're definitely not going to budge, or that's a boring take because we all know what they are going to think. I show up for GOTYs enthusiastically awaiting all of the comments from all of the allies, because that's the thing. It's like, we can have our opinions. You can kind of preload all of those opinions beforehand, but then you really need to add it. You need to add it all up. You need to, bring all your receipts and talk about absolutely everything you think is pertinent before that final vote is made. I definitely had my conversation going into Red Dead, knowing that Red Dead probably was not going to win GOTY with this crew, but I instead, tried to focus on something that I thought was personal to me, that I thought was represented really well in Red Dead, and certainly not only did no other game do in 2019, but I had never seen in a game before, or 2018 rather. Noah Weinstein, who does not comment on Cup of Jones that often, and when Noah does, it's going to be something like, we should do that, Noah. Do you think it would be valuable to invest more heavily time-wise in creating community-oriented avenues, opportunities, etc. in relation to your content? Definitely, but Noah brings up a great example. You've got a frequently wonderful and active community, but it doesn't often feel like a really cohesive unit. When it does, though, it's the best. I know you weren't super involved in it, but allowing the community to bet alongside the allies this E3 was some of the most engaged I've ever seen the wider community get. It was almost magical. Everyone was hyper-invested on every platform, not just your betting special, but in our own dumb bets. It really connected all of us in a strange way. I honestly think it was pretty genius. I also liken that experience to all of the fresh, fun Pokemon fan art during Silver Squad. It's taken on a sort of collaborative vibe, where the inside jokes are elevated, and everyone becomes more keenly invested in the pseudo-narrative of the stream itself. This is also present in the fan art section of Kyle's solo streams. It might also be worth mentioning older events like Kyle's Trial or the Better Stuff Before E3 fundraiser as events that especially bolstered a heightened sense of community from what I saw. Are these all just lightning in a bottle, or do you think there's a space for any other shows, streams, or engagement on social media maybe for this kind of a wider community involvement? hell yeah. But what you bring up is that these are all very specific. The Silver Squad stuff I was not prepared for. I did not know of this regular like massive art. Vex Shanu was a name I was not familiar with, but I'm very familiar with now. But a lot of this stuff, I pop in on a Kyle stream every now and then, but there's a lot of streams obviously that we don't have time to watch. And so that kind of got blindsided by that. But a lot of the other things that you're talking about are specific events. They are events that we know are coming up. So we can not only have like Blood was talking about where we assign reviews, but we have a meeting at the end of every month. We look ahead at the events, that are happening, and we need to get all of that stuff sorted out first. And so it's tough once all of that stuff sorted out. We've been talking for like 4 or 5 hours. We're like, oh, okay. And then like on top of that to be like, okay, let's talk events. Woo. So like, I'm so dead. I'm going to be on like 8 podcasts and I'm going to do like 9 reviews and all this stuff. And so when we do these special events, these need to either be established in something that we know we're going to be doing, like bets around E3 that we know we want to change, that takes extra time for Kyle Bossman and Michael Kubert to get together and figure out how we're going to do that, and then extra time for all of us to come together and shoot that stuff, or better stuff for E3, something that we know is coming up, and we know we're going to set that time. We know like when March hits, like, hey, we're going to do that fundraiser stream before E3. So this is a conversation we're continually having. And it's just difficult for all of us when we're creating this content to be picking that stuff, which is why, or championing that stuff, because inevitably something else has to go. Like Kyle had to make a sacrifice for bets to step away from Box Peak for a little bit, and so all of it's just measuring all of those different pots that are boiling at Easy Allies in terms of like what we have time to do and what we can gather to do as a group. But you bring up a really interesting effect. In terms of not just getting outreach socially to increase the viewership of what we're doing, to increase, when we bring Box Peak Season 2 back, to have everybody be aware that something like that is happening. So obviously we can get a lot of traction on it and get a lot of views on it and have everybody, as many people as can watch Box Peak Season 2 as possible. But obviously it reinvigorates our community. This is a community-driven thing. We exist, almost solely on the support that we get from our community on our various platforms. So it's tough. This is one of those Cuppa Jones questions where it's like, you're right. It's not something that you will see, exemplify or make changes immediately at Easy Allies, but you're right. You're absolutely 100% right. It's also something that we have been talking about, possibly bringing in other people that can manage those social things. Maybe more specifically on the back end, kind of like once we make posts to then continue to engage the community, when a lot of us don't necessarily have time to do that. One other thing that I will say, as I can drop as many possible excuses as I can before we finish this topic. Well, we're so busy now. Is the studio. I think our community involvement kind of represents an initiative that would be good for the company across the board, and I think to enact a lot of the change that you're talking about that kind of moves away from these. It's like, oh, we had a big event and that was fun, and wouldn't that be great if we could do that all the time? I think that sort of change can hopefully come in when we are much more settled on spending a lot of money and time on making the studio better. That's definitely been a priority for 2019, which is why I think, like you said, the Silver Squad and our betting special were kind of only the two examples. Looking forward to doing more of those in 2020. We were planning that stuff like that in 2020 and have conversations about stuff like that in 2020. So hopefully in end of October 2020, I will get a comment from you, Noah, like, better. Brian Danu, how are the panels chosen for the podcast panels each week? Is this something that is up to the host of each podcast? Yes. Or is there a rotating schedule that cycles through Allies? It is, but none of us are really paying that close attention to it. It's really up to the host to remind us, ensuring no one person is on too many podcast episodes. We don't necessarily worry about that in between podcasts. If someone's on the Easy Allies podcast that week, we wouldn't necessarily deter that person from being on Frame Trap, because those are just different conversations on those two podcasts that generally happen. But we do have a rotation. A lot of times for Ben, the panel will change depending on who has stuff to talk about that week. And so a lot of times if there's a big review that week, generally at least that person will be on Frame Trap along with someone else who could talk about other things that they've streamed or played or worked on behind the scenes. And then, of course, Bloodworth comments, I definitely have times when I get the triple hit. It also is worth mentioning that sometimes people are working on stuff. Sometimes if we have a review embargo coming up, or if someone's at a preview event or something, it's usually a week in advance that Kyle will be like, oh, you're going to be out next week. Wait a minute. Okay. I actually saw this happen in front of me. I think Damiani filled in for someone. I think Huber was gone, and so Damiani filled in for Huber, and then Huber was like, I'll fill in for Damiani the following week. So sometimes that happens, but that's usually closer to the episode actually being recorded. Asbo Zapruder. So if Phase 4 of Easy Allies was Christine Daae, would it choose the Phantom or Raul? Easy Allies would definitely choose the Phantom. Are you kidding me? We did that was Patreon. Patreon was on the other side of that mirror. Come with me, Easy Allies. And we're like, oh, what in the smoke? And we like, Patreon's like, we're going through the sewer with Patreon. What is Joe talking about? Straw Hat Ninja. How important are Twitch subs to your business? I always remember trying to remember to give you my Twitch Prime sub every month, but sometimes I forget about it since I usually can't watch stuff live. Twitch subs are important. Not incredibly important. Patreon is very important. Patreon is our I wouldn't say our number one priority, but is definitely, a top priority for us. But the reason why Twitch subs are important, there's a lot of different reasons. One, our Twitch revenue is growing faster than our YouTube revenue. I can say that officially. As you can imagine, YouTube, it takes their pennies for various reasons, and you have to have a tremendous amount of traction on YouTube. And we just post a lot of videos on YouTube that serve our Patreon, serve our community, that aren't necessarily us trying to get those views. Whereas our growth on Twitch has been substantial. We definitely have seen a lot of great traction on Twitch since we started Phase 4 and since we've been doing a lot of our regularly scheduled stuff. Obviously, as I mentioned, Silver Squad is completely out of control. And kind of what Noah was saying on a very, very, very microscopic scale, but the act of resubbing during a stream, the act of having our different colored A's that you get over, depending on how long you've subbed. I think all of those things, kind of denote an engagement, a real-time engagement, an engagement that you can see us talking about in real time. And I think that always, makes people feel, whether they've been around Easy Allies for a long time or whether they're just introduced to Easy Allies, that we do get support, that we do have a community that likes us, that they can leave, fun comments and choose when they want to resub, on what streams they want to be engaged in. So there are a lot of positive about Twitch subs, but Straw Hat Ninja, this is one of those things. I'm sorry you can't get to watch stuff live. I'm sorry if it doesn't work out in your time zone. But is like people say when they're like, hey, I got $5. Should I give it to you on Patreon? Should I just watch more YouTube videos, or what? How can I support you financially? Again, we can weigh one better way over another, but it's not. I think if you're even asking that question, you are a much better fan than we deserve. If you're really trying to figure that out, just the fact that you keep following us is a tremendous gift that you give us. Mick Roper, I was thinking about your purposefully infrequent usage of the word promise. If you're unfamiliar, I try not to say that I'm going to promise. I promise we're going to do that, because people come back to me and they're like, wait a minute, you didn't do that thing. I'm like, well, I didn't promise. And whether or not that means anything to most. There are some things that feel inherent to content creation of any type, the most extreme example of which is starting a Let's Play. If you do begin an IP and your name is something like Let's Play Desert Bus Part 1, by some definition, you're setting yourself up for people to, at minimum, expect you will see a Part 2. Or, if we want to go to a more pop culture example, if you're creating Star Wars Episode 7, people are out there waiting for Star Wars Episode 9. Whenever I hear you talk about promises, there's usually no mention of this transactional nature between creator and viewer. You also only seem to mention promises on this show, of which only a portion of the Easy A viewership consumes. In relation, as related to Easy A, what I'm then led to think about is reviews that were dropped when you were out with Milo. Congrats, by the way, that the little guy is just so cute. Specifically, Mario Maker 2 and Dragon Quest Builders 2. To the point of promises, no one in Easy A promised that those two games would be reviewed, but there is an exception, built by 4 years of hard work by the Easy A crew, that major games will be reviewed. When you were slated to review those two games and then Milo was born, my expectation, if not that other patrons or reviewers of the content, was that another ally would pick up the reviews. Speaking personally, at my job, if someone is on leave, it means that there's a bunch of work that needs to be picked up by coworkers. In the lighter review season, or just after E3 as well, it was very interesting that all those games were avoided by Easy A. Those reviews were avoided by Easy A. Mario Maker 2 was not avoided by ECA. We streamed Mario Maker 2 a lot. We talked about Mario Maker 2 a lot. There's been several Dawn's Design Lab episodes. Like, we did not, and I think that's also kind of the reason Mario Maker 2 specifically dropped like right when Milo happened. Like, I would have reviewed Mario Maker 2 when I was like in the hospital. So that was no question that I was not going to do that. Dragon Quest Builders 2, I could have hustled and maybe done it. I could have dropped a review that was like super late. But that is something that I also knew I was going to be talking about, something that I knew not only was I going to bring up on Frame Trap, but that Ben was obviously going to play that as well. So like, I knew those conversations were going to happen. I think Greedfall is a more interesting example of terms of something that like has not gotten any coverage at Easy Allies. This actually brings up 2 points of just kind of, I was surprised that nobody else picked up those games. People were just working on other projects. That's the thing, is like when you talk about overtime and how other typical companies work, your job is kind of created to fill that gap. Whereas like if you were working on a job and somebody had just a bunch of like straight menial tasks to do, you know, emails to send or a meeting to attend or something like that, then like that's something that I could do because I've been around you and your job. Where if it's a game that I'm not interested in, like we don't want to just hand that off to somebody who doesn't want to review it. We don't want to just hand off something to someone who doesn't have experience or isn't good at a genre, or, you know, like someone's just like, no, hands off. I don't want to work on that project. So, and a lot of the time it's not so simple as somebody taking on a review and then being able to do all the stuff that they're doing at the same time. That we would have to, you know, cancel. It'd be like a domino effect. Like we'd have to cancel one project to hand off another and so on and so forth. So a lot of times if somebody can't review something, it just kind of falls through the cracks if nobody's available. But going back to the promises, I don't bring up promises to make some kind of official moniker that, like, because you've never heard me say on the group streams or whether, you know, in a more public forum on someone else's podcast that like, excuse me, I made a promise about that. I bring that up because one thing that I struggled with early on in Easy Allies was being comfortable with saying no to you patrons, you know, being comfortable with, you know, Noah leaving that amazing comment and being like, yeah, that's not really a focus for us right now. That's something good to know. And we will move on that in the future if we can, you know, do stuff like that more often, make that more of a priority at Easy Allies. But anytime I said no, anytime somebody would bring up something and say, hey, we had this conversation previously on Cup of Jones. So yeah, you say that you only bring this up on Cup of Jones. Not a lot of people watch this. The whole promise thing is only a Cup of Jones thing. That's just for specifically this audience and how we communicate about things. So if you come back to me with a comment on Cup of Jones and say, hey, wait a minute, I'll be like, did I promise that? So that's why I bring that up, is more just for me to be comfortable with how I approach things and not just take everything as like a potential disappointment for our community, something that, you know, that we cannot do. And then that frustrates people that people were expecting that stuff. So, yeah, it's just a Cup of Jones thing. Ba-doom. Next Gen Hef. For the first time, the scores for bets in the Easy A podcasts will be coming down to the wire. I know. With how close it is. Any thoughts on a bets award show? Awards could be for best bet, worst bet, most consistent bet. And then for best bet and worst bet, you could have patrons nominate and vote for certain bets made throughout the year. You guys could even have Don host it because he's a third party. I just think it would be nice since bets will probably go deep into December this year. Yeah, I'll bring that up. That's totally up to Kyle. I would not count on that happening. But I'll bring that up with Kyle. And I certainly don't want to just like, you know, say, hey, Don, you're doing this. I don't know if Don would be interested in that either. And certainly if we lose bets this year, then I certainly don't want to do an award ceremony for the gorillas. Like, there you go, give them the awards. Yeah, if we lose, I'm just going to want to, you know, duck my head in shame and head over to just head out on my Christmas break and cry the whole time. We're so close, though. It's insane. I try not to, like, think about it, because what the heck am I going to do to, like, change it? Obviously, just, like, don't get sick and attend every podcast. I think that should be, like, the number one priority. Josh Reed, final question. It's remarkable to me that after 3.5 years of Easy Allies, all 9 allies are still there. Knock on wood. How is that? I mean, it's so common to see staff shakeups at various video game outlets that it's almost expected that someone leaves or joins every year or two. You all have so many people and still manage to make all of this without anybody leaving. I'm wondering what the secret sauce is, particularly in a Patreon-supported business where none of you are making nearly as much money as you were in your previous company. It's interesting that you say particularly in a Patreon-supported business. There's your reason. Like, you have... I owned GameTrailers.com up until 2005, and then I sold it to Viacom. I then started an LLC that I did on the side, had a couple projects, made a card game that didn't go anywhere. I worked on some side stuff, and then, then here we are in 2015, moving into 2016, and I have this other opportunity to own this other thing, to have a joint ownership with 8 other guys. Those other guys obviously have owned, Ian especially has done a lot of crazy like LLC work and other stuff on the side. Like those guys, have their own interests and have things that they own. But collaboratively owning this company, at least for me, again, I cannot speak for the other 8 allies. I can't speak to what their special sauce is, the secret sauce. I know that morale is extremely important to me as editor-in-chief. Like that's something that I put on a higher pedestal than a lot of other issues that we have at Easy Allies. It's kind of like we talked about how we don't want to saddle people with a review that they don't want. We don't want to force them into a project that we don't want to do. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Doesn't mean we're just like skipping through the fields every single time we work on something. Like there are grueling days at Easy Allies where we're like, man, I wish I was doing anything other than this, but I know it's good for the company. I'm excited about this project ending. I'm excited to work on it. I'm sure Kyle would love to have Box Peak Season 2 over, but he's definitely going to be proud of himself when he gets all of that stuff done. And so I think it's an investment in our work. It's an investment in our company, and it is an investment in the opportunities that we have. Because I think for me, if I was going to leave Easy Allies, I would leave the games industry. Like I don't know where I would go that would give me the access that we have at Easy Allies, the creative freedom that I have at Easy Allies, the financial freedom that I have at Easy Allies. And I know it might seem strange because it's like you're all making less than you did when you were at Game Trailers, but I know I'm not going to be fired. I know I'm not. I don't know what's going to happen to Patreon.com. I think that's one of the bigger questions. Certainly YouTube.com and Twitch.tv. Like we don't control these platforms. We don't know what weird tech they're going to take away or add, or how they're going to change their pricing models or anything like that. But I certainly know, what freedoms I have now. Meetings at Defy Media sucked. Like every week I would go to a meeting where the majority of the meeting I would listen to information that did not help me at all in my job. And I was forced to go to those meetings. And so it's like, our lives have changed so much more positively for the better. There's so many things about our jobs that if we want to change, we can change it ourselves. Having that power, having that freedom, having that relationship with our community, all of that stuff is, just speaking personally for myself, extremely hard to walk away from. I have a lot of other things. I have writing goals that I want to do. I have, other creative projects that I would love to invest in the future. All of that would involve, stepping away from my work at Easy Allies, not Easy Allies, but stepping away from my responsibilities at Easy Allies in a substantial way. I can't do it. It's too much fun. It's too good. Blood is not weighed in on this at all. I'm curious what Blood thinks. What's the secret sauce, Blood? What's your secret sauce? What makes Blood worth bite into that Big Mac and go, of Easy Allies? That secret sauce. Those sesame seeds, they really go a long way. But yeah, that is the big question. Maybe that's something we can talk about every day. Clearly, it's Cup of Jones that is the secret sauce that is bringing everybody together. It's like we go through the week, we make mistakes, we do some things good, we do some things bad, but then Cup of Jones is back, the first show that we do every single week, and I'm just here to set everything straight. Blood's like, yeah, I think the ownership for sure. That's definitely, again, I will never ever speak on behalf of any of the 8 other allies, but I can definitely say that I've heard allies say before that that means a lot to them. They're like, oh, it's really cool that I can have that I have this ownership, an equal ownership in this company. How cool is that? All right, that's the end of our questions. And no one has the time to think about doing anything else. Perfect, Blood. Perfect way to wrap up that. Here's our editorial for the week. All right. Something came up that I'm not going to talk about this specific example, but I thought it brought up an interesting debate at Easy Allies that I've found myself in before, and somebody brought up the review specifically in our questions. And so this is going to be a brief editorial. I don't want to go expound too much on this, but we have an interesting conflict of interest at Easy Allies. We don't have those that often, and this is something I think that just kind of like raised some Metal Gear Solid exclamation points, and then we realized, oh, that's actually not that big of a deal, because just like everything else with Easy Allies, it all concerns transparency. Michael Huber is a Shenmue 3 Kickstarter backer. Michael Huber has given money to Shenmue 3 for Shenmue 3 to exist. that raises into question, what are we going to do when Michael Huber reviews Shenmue 3 or does not review Shenmue 3? I want to talk about just this concept of us having a financial vested interest in these companies. I'm actually going to use it myself as an example because we don't know what Huber's going to do. We don't have Shenmue 3 yet. Huber hasn't played it yet. So we're going to get that game and then we're going to give it to Huber and then Huber's going to play it and then Huber's going to tell us what he wants to do. If we end up doing a review or if we end up doing any coverage, it behooves us, I think, to be as open as possible with the fact, I think there are a lot of people on the internet, they're going to see Shenmue and be like, oh, wait, even past knowing that Huber contributed to that Kickstarter, they'd be like, that's that crazy Shenmue guy that's really into Shenmue. I guess, he's talking about Shenmue some more. But I think it is something that you, patrons, viewers, the world needs to be aware of the fact that is Huber's perspective on that review. And it was just an interesting process for us because like something that direct has never come up. And it came up and I was like, oh, no, that's right. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. We just say that. We just say if he reviews it. Again, like I'm not lumping this on Huber in terms of like what he should do. That is still up to him. But I like that transparency and a lot of the behaviors that we've been practicing over the last 3.5, almost 4 years now, kind of speak to that skill set, of being honest with people, being upfront about our reviews, having a show like this where I answer a question on Cup of Jones, but also the opportunities provided to each ally following their review. So they can put out the review, but then they can talk about their expectations for that game on the Easy Allies podcast. They can talk about their experience with that game on Frame Trap or possibly Friend Code. They can stream that game. They can, while we're on group streams or while other questions come up while we're live, they can continue the conversation. Obviously, they can go to social media. They can communicate with our community via Patreon. So there's a lot of other avenues for people to keep the conversation going, and so that hopefully there's absolutely no confusion surrounding these things. But it made me think about Disney Infinity. It made me think about Disney just as a whole. And apologies, I wrote a very, very evil tweet this weekend because I was thinking about Disney Plus, and I was like, it's too bad. There are a lot of things coming out of Disney Plus that people told me about while I was covering Disney Infinity that were like, oh, it would be great. Like bed knobs and broomsticks, it'd be great for Disney Infinity, all this stuff. And then like, finally everyone can watch all of these things on one video service and Disney Infinity's not around. So apologies for the hearts I crushed with that tweet. But, it was interesting that I have been treated very well by the Disney company over the years. Like I have been got access to their office. I remember one of my most proud Disney moments, like of my lifetime, was for Epic Mickey 2. I got to meet Warren Spector, and I literally shook Warren Spector's hand as we were walking into Disneyland, and I knew he was a big Disney guy, and he was a little shy that day. I was trying to ask him questions, and he didn't seem like he wanted to talk to people. And but that was the first time that day I've ever gotten into Walt's apartment. For those that don't know, when you walk into Disneyland, there's a fire department, there is a fire department at Disneyland. They don't hang out there, but there is a firehouse, and on the top of that firehouse is an apartment where Walt Disney used to hang out with his family, and the Disneys still have access to that room. They can still hang out in that room if they want to. I don't know how often they use that, but there's a lamp in the window that's always on that denotes that Disney's always still there, that his spirit is still, October, woo, Disney spirit still floating around Disneyland, and it's, I think, easier to get into now. I think you can just pay a certain amount of money and you go on a tour to get into. But for a while, for a couple decades, it was tricky to get in this room. And it was the first time in my lifetime that I'd ever been in there. I have since been in there once. I've been in that room twice. But that blew my mind. And that was Epic Mickey 2. And then we just tanked that game. We I didn't review it. I think Damiani reviewed it and he was like, ugh. I don't like this game. A lot of people didn't like that game. Disney Infinity's been good to me over the years. I've been to a lot of different events at Disneyland. Thanks to Disney Infinity, been to a lot of different events. Got flown up to, I believe, Utah, where Avalanche Studios software is. Avalanche Software made Disney Infinity and was possibly making that new Harry Potter game. Avalanche Studios makes Just Cause and Rage 2. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But So it was always a challenge for me to be transparent about those things, to obviously be communicative with everyone on social media, being like, hey, look, here's where I am. Here's who paid for this. Here's why I'm here. And then, as you can see, evidenced, actually, you can see, John Vignacchi being irked by the low review score that I gave 2.0 or 3.0. He was not happy with the 8 or the 8.2 or whatever I gave it. So that's always been something not only that I try to do in my work, but makes me feel good about, obviously, as ethics in games journalism, is a major concern, that I not only feel that I've been transparent about, but I feel pretty good about, how honest I've been about the stuff that I have access to. And not only that, but how then that... And I know this is something I can just say, and you're like, sure, Jones, that's just like an easy thing to say. But how when it actually comes down to the point of reviewing that game, when it actually comes down to dropping a score on something, I don't think I've ever even been remotely influenced, even been remotely scared of being influenced by something else, because we have strong opinions about games. Like, I can like something, man. I can like Star Wars. I can like Disney. I can like... even just going to review events. We just talked about the Call of Duty review event. The one that I did for Advanced Warfare, whichever one Troy Baker was in. The one where there's a Golden Gate Bridge level. I went to this insane review event that was there. We had our own rooms. They had speakers set up, and we had our own little big screen TVs we could play the campaign on, and just all of this stuff. And I was like, oh, the game was okay. It's like it just never factors into the thing I really want to talk about. Like, I don't want to talk about that experience. I don't want that experience to influence my games. I'm here to talk about that game. I'm here to talk about whether that game was good or not. If that game wasn't good, I cannot wait to tell people that game wasn't good. And it's interesting. I definitely feel a certain level of, I think respect is a strong word, because it's just like, I think people respect us. But I think there definitely is an understanding. I think there definitely is an acceptance across the board, from PR people, from publishers, from developers, and certainly from our community. When we try to be as honest as possible, we keep that dialogue going. You keep hearing about games coming up again and again. There is no question, I believe, in our community, what Ian Hank thinks about The Last of Us, and The Witcher 3, and how Kyle Bossman feels about A Link to the Past. Like, these things that, regardless of how this stuff gets remastered or who's reviewing what or what's going on, there's enough opportunities for us to talk about these things. And I think, bringing it back to the beginning of this editorial, I think Huber's position about where he is at, I think, should be made absolutely crystal clear. If there's any confusion whatsoever, we're happy to talk about that. Before he is presented with that game, and before he finally gets, which I am on the edge of my seat, just like the rest of you, in terms of what he'll think. And we'll see what form that'll take. Maybe he'll end up halfway through it being like, I don't want to review the game. And then he finishes it and he's like, wait, no, I want to review it. And we're like, oh, okay. It's been a couple weeks ever came out, but whatever, go for it. Or he's just like, nope, I want to just, all frame traps good enough. We're like, okay. Or he wants to make another video that's just Huber at a desk looking to the camera, talking to another ally, or just screaming into the void all of his crazy opinions about Shenmue 3. So, case in point, TLDR, Huber backed that Kickstarter campaign. We're going to try to be as transparent as possible, and just, it reminds me of all these other instances where stuff like this has come up in the past, and you can clearly see our interests. And I think we need to be, Rockstar in general. I mean, a big Rockstar fan, and I'm definitely going to be excited about all of those games, but I'm certainly, at the same time, going to be way more critical of them as well. I brought up a critique about Rogue One, where I've never liked it, where when all the soldiers turn around and Vader's there in the darkness, and he turns on his lights, the red lightsaber, and he's like, I'm here in the hallway. I'm like, why are you standing there, Vader? It's like my Terminator argument. It's like, what? Go! They have the plans. Get them. Just force grab the plans. I think that scene's cool when he starts just ripping stuff up, but that moment's so stupid to me. It always gets really frustrated. I just kind of roll my eyes and just like, okay. And a lot of people on social media were like, dude, calm down, man. And I'm like, I won't calm down because it's Star Wars. And a lot of times I tend to be more critical of the things that I care more about. That moment stood out to me because Darth Vader is a very important character to me as a human being. It bothers me when a character does something that doesn't make sense, even for a half second. And so, even though I had to stop talking about Last Jedi, not because I wanted to shame Last Jedi people that really, really liked the movie when I didn't like it or had a lot of issues with it, but because I just want to figure it out. I just want to know what's going on. A lot of people offered some really fresh takes on Terminator 2 that, did change some of my opinions about that movie. And I really enjoyed that after I went on my tirade. And so I find that, even when it seems like we're too close to something, I think in a lot of instances we tend to be more critical about those things because we want those things. Open world games, man. I have a high bar. High bar for open world games. It's my favorite genre, but Horizon 2, you got to have more interesting story than Horizon 1. The ending was good, but the middle of the campaign, Horizon 2, you got to bring it. I'm looking at you, Gorilla. There we go. Takeaways. Does Huber want to do VO for the Shenmue 3 review? I'll ask him. Bet's award show? Not likely, but I'll ask Kyle. And I loved Noah's comment about having more community involvement. Thank you, Noah. Boom. Those are our takeaways. Again, New Dawn's Design Led coming up in just like an hour. Go check it out. YouTube.com/EasyAllies. And tune in tomorrow night for our final celebration. Again, we'll be streaming on Halloween night. But in case all of you missed those streams, hopefully you'll come around tomorrow night and hang out with us for a little Halloween celebration. It'll be a good time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers.